questions. Really appreciate it. I've had loads of questions. No, not the questions. Loads of requests for me to show you the studio. So I wanted to do that before too long. So I'm going to show you around. So this used to be a barn, like very sort of derelict kind of barn, and we converted it. So it's basically like completely as we wanted it. We redesigned the whole workflow and everything. So if you follow me, my trusty cameraman. Lots of people have been asking about this piano, which is my trusty Yamaha piano. It's the first piano that I ever bought, and it cost about £850. And when the piano tuner first came, my piano tuner at my last studio came, he said, "Can I have a quick word in your ear after you'd finished tuning the piano?" I said, "Yeah, is everything okay?" And he said, "Yeah, I just wanted to discuss the piano with you in there." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "Yeah, you're a professional musician, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I'll definitely think about selling that piano." I said, "What do you mean? Like, I love this piano. It's my first piano, and I played it on all the records that I've made and stuff." And he said, "Well, yeah, it's just, I've been trying to tune it. I think it sounds absolutely awful. To be honest, I wouldn't even use it for kindling in my fire." I said, "Well, I think it sounds great. I've used it on every recording. I'm confused by this." I said, I've used it on, some Sam Smith stuff. I did a track with Adele recently." He said, "You did a track with that piano, with Adele?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, which track was it?" I said, "Set Fire to the Rain." So I took him back to the studio, and I said, "Look, listen to this." From then on, he was very respectful of this old piano, £850. So it does show you that you don't have to have loads and loads of money to buy. Obviously £850 is a lot of money, but you don't have to have thousands of thousands spending on a piano for it to be good, for it to write a great song. So, moving on, this amazing grand piano that was left to me by a lovely man called David Barlow and was just recently restored by a good friend of mine called Paul, did an incredible job, and you can see, if you come around here, the level of sight reading that I'm on, which is so basic that this is Michael Aaron's piano course lessons, grade 2. So this is what we're talking about. Now, the proof of the pudding is, if I was to sit down here, it would probably take me half an hour to read this. There's loads of you on here that would just be able to read this straight. Honestly, I'm like F, A, B, A, C, E, F, G. Very good. So my trusty cameraman here, Sarah, is laughing because she could read this actually perfectly, and she's not even a musician. So how does that make me feel? Great. This guitar I wanted to show you, which is the guitar that I did Live 8 with Craig David and Madison Square Garden, Wembley Arena, hundreds of performances, Royal Variety Performance, Jules Holland loads of times. This is the guitar. Love this guitar. Well, I wouldn't say any of my guitars, but good old Craig. Great times, great days. Every single performance we did was with this guitar, so it's a beauty. Okay, loads of guitars hanging up. You can tell I'm a guitar player by heart. There's a little Telecaster behind there that I played. Actually, it It's a Sam Smith song, not in that way that I played this Telecaster. What else have we got here? Decks. Not many people know, but I am an absolute frustrated. I'm not even frustrated. I'm a. Not gonna closet DJ sounds weird, but all over the decks. When I'm not working in the studio, I'm in here mixing tunes together. This is a melee tune, by the way, of my friend. Doing that all the time, absolutely love it. More guitars. This, let's actually turn that off. Tinderlux just won't do. Going into the night. The desk that I was telling you about, that my good friend Alex asked about last week, Undertone Audio desk that I mixed through. The ATC speakers up here. Barefoot monitors. All the outboard. Patch bay. This, I'm just walking, I mean this is probably obvious to a lot of people, but if you're a songwriter and you wanted to get one mic, I know there's like loads of USB mics out there that you can just plug straight in and they're great, but for me, if you had to have one microphone, I think this mic's like £350. It's such a great investment because you can use it in the room to record, but you can also use it as a proper like finished vocal mic. The Shure SM7, I think it's an amazing mic. Oh, we'll show you if you can see into the vocal booth. That's where my other mics are, through there where I record. And there are, you can't really see it. There are, oh, we're gonna go and see it. We're gonna go and see it. My cameraman's great, like director here, so love it. Here we go. Into the booth. We tried to show you the booth, but bad connection. So that's where I've got the other mic. So you can probably see it now through the. So Sony C800 and a Wonder Audio mic and a, what's the other one? Elam. Elam. Can't remember what the thing is. Synths, Moog synths, more guitars, of course. And trusty Juno. Can you get there? Ableton, MPC. Ableton rig over here, where I start most of Innovation Summit keyboard, which I love. A few more bits of outboard down here. And lots more Undertone audio stuff. Racks. My synths go through these preamps. Sound really good. Old Revox mixer. Ableton Push, Mellotron, the trusty Fossil that I recorded some ideas on, and the Memory Moog. Thank you for a great film there. Let's just flip this around, put this back. Anyway, I always said that these IG Lives were not going to be about me. They were going to be about you, because of the questions that you were asking, but I just wanted to show that studio because a lot of people were asking, and show you around where I am every day, and just like having a great time basically. So I hope that helped. Right, questions. Thank you for the filming, Sarah. That was Sarah, my wife, that was doing a good job. Right, Josh is on the text, so that is helping a lot. What's your opinion of Zoom sessions? Is it the future of writing music? For me, I find it very difficult because I love getting the vibe with people when they're in the studio and reading things like body language, and I find it quite hard on Zoom. But I think that it's been good for some people, and if it keeps the creativity going, and it's better to collaborate on Zoom than not at all. So I think for me, I have done it a couple of times, and it's not the easiest thing. I guess if it was someone that you knew really well, you could. In fact, I mean, I say that I was working with my great friend and amazing artist Maisie recently, and when we did it, but we know each other really well, so. But I think I've done a couple of things where it's kind of like the first time you've met, and I don't know, it is a bit weird. So, is it the future of writing music? I really hope not, because there's nothing better than being in a room with somebody that you're creating with and creating something together. So, what's a big turn-off when you're collaborating with other writers in a session? I think a big turn-off is when people shut down, not when people shut down your ideas, but when people are maybe on a negative, but then they don't come up with an idea. So say I was to play a guitar chord, and people say, no, I don't like that, and then that's okay, and then you try some other chords, and someone says, oh, I don't really like that, and then you're thinking, well, do you have any ideas? And I think that's a good kind of rule of thumb for everyone, that when you're writing songs, it's always good if you were to try, if someone comes up with an idea, to kind of counter it, not in a trying to sort of beat them down, but if you're saying, if someone comes with something and say, okay, cool, how about this, and then I think it's just like an energetic thing within the room that always needs to make things a bit better, between you. So I think that's the only thing that would piss me off. I think if people are just shutting down constantly but they're not coming with anything. What's the most frustrating thing about the music industry? I've thought about this a lot, because I mean I'm really lucky to be in the music industry and to have had such a long career in the music industry, and I keep meeting amazing people in the music industry, and without it I wouldn't be here. But I think every artist's struggle is with art versus commerce, because art opposes commerce in a lot of ways, well, in every way, and you're treading the fine line between the sort of journey that you want to take in a song, which ultimately is very free, and the commercial pressures of trying to make something commercial, sometimes not for the sake of it being commercial, but for outside influences, ultimately profit for big companies. So I think that's the most challenging. I wouldn't say frustrating, because I think that the way that I try to rationalize it is that if you're writing something commercial, then just make it, or just understand the parameters around a song, because I think that there is a way of making something artistically very, very pure and it being successful, but I think that you have to tread carefully. It's a very, very tough thing. But there's sometimes if people want something that's very commercial for whatever reason, then do that in the best way that it can be done. That's the way I try and approach it. And if you're making art, then make art, and hopefully there's a way that the art will reach the attention of lots of people. But I think art and commerce is a tricky one. How much attention do you pay to the trends when making music? That's another good question. I think that production is very much trend based, and I think that then it depends on the art and commerce side. If you're going for a massive hit, then I think people expect to hear something that's quite similar, maybe with a bit of a twist, but an algorithmically friendly type of sound that you could look at maybe the top 20 songs on Spotify and go down that route. But I think songwriting is much more pure. I think a great song is a great song, and I think that a James Taylor song stood up then, or any great song by any of the great songwriters would have stood up then and would stand up now. Certain lyrical things maybe being the exception, but I think that trends, it's production, because I guess production is like the frame around the song. So I guess that's important. But then breaking, depending on who the artist is you're working for, if you're doing your own thing, then it's sometimes more about a feeling, and it's maybe good to buck against the trends. So I guess it depends what the aim is on that, in terms of what you're trying to achieve, because breaking trends is great if you can, and then when it pays off, you become like a visionary rather than a follower, which I think is always going to be the aim for any artist, songwriter, producer. I mean, when I say artist, I don't mean necessarily like the artist. I mean an artist as in any creator. What's the most important thing when writing with artists? Vibes, ideas, question mark. Good question. I think it's empathy in terms of what they're looking to achieve. I mean, if you're being hired as a songwriter or as a producer, and you're there to assist the artist, then it's about getting onto their wavelength, and I think it's about making them feel comfortable. And I mean, it's interesting because I was showing you around the gear, but I don't know if it was apparent, but the vibe here is really nice, and I think that's really important, so that when artists come in, it's things like it's literally like being in my front room. I mean, it might as well be my front room, the amount of time I spend here, but it's designed for that kind of calm, peaceful, there's a certain amount of sort of order here, but it sort of feels creative as well, and that there's synths around, and so I think it's vibes, but it's getting onto the right vibe of the artist, rather than having the latest bit of gear, or I think it's always good to have ideas and to have some background on the artist before they come in, so that you can connect a lot quicker. So what's the best way to start a writing session? A good cup of tea, or a coffee, or a if it's appropriate, shot of tequila, maybe. No, I think whatever way to get on the right level, and just so that you can both be at ease, because it is an unnerving kind of situation. Sometimes, we talked about it before, but where you're in a room with someone, you're having to sort of expose your musical ideas to someone. It's still like petrifying for me, and I've done it a million times. I guess that's kind of the thing about it, that if you got bored and it was just like, oh, the next artist rolls in, and you're just, I've done this a million times, you didn't really feel anything for it, then it would probably be a good time to give up. But yeah, I think just settling in, making sure it's amazing how sometimes I've seen artists go for a long time, and no one's offered them a drink, or you don't know, like often artists have been, before they come to see you, they've been doing interviews and all these different things. Have they got something to eat? Have you maybe just called ahead to see what kind of food they like, or without sort of overindulging people, but I think just being really hospitable and making people feel the love, really. What's the best song you personally think you've written? This is from my very good friend Jamie. And I was thinking about this in a footballing capacity, because I think the disparity is between, for me anyway, as a writer and a producer, sometimes there's amazing songs like Set Fire to the Rain, Adele. People will always probably talk about that and talk about, God willing, and it's amazing to have been part of it. But if I'm really honest, and it's not me and my imposter syndrome like creeping in, but if I'm really honest, like that piano riff that I played earlier, I'm really proud of. I think it was great, and the whole thing that I brought to that song in terms of the mood of the drums and the bass and the sort of drama of it, and the strings that Rosie Danvers did, and Ash Sohn playing those amazing drums, and the way that the bass was locking in, and like the whole, that side of it, I think was great, around obviously the piano part that I'd written. But actually to take like the credit for the song is very hard when you've got an artist like Adele or Dave with Black. Like, it's his narrative, that's his vision on that song. Stormzy, Blinded by Your Grace. I mean, like, I love those chords that I came up with, but these guys they're just incredible. So to me, to put it into footballing terms, those songs feel like assists, because they don't feel like we're both scoring the goals together. I mean, for me, I'm there to assist the artists. So actually wouldn't be one of the bigger songs that you might expect. I think for me it would be a toss-up between a song that I wrote recently with Arlo Parks called Stranger in the Night, which just felt very whole for me, because we sat there writing lyrics together, and we went back and forward, and I had an input on the melody, and yeah, we really I felt like that was like a joint sort of goal that we scored on that. And there was a song with Luke from the Kooks that we wrote called Icons, which I don't even know if it's on the streaming services, but that's one of my favourite songs ever. And that was just, I was playing the synths, he was playing, we were writing, I came up with a concept. It's a deep concept that doesn't even bear like going into, but it's called Icons. And yeah, but I think for me, those two songs, they're the ones that I really feel like, in amongst other songs that you had a massive part in, but I think where it's like music and top line is separated, for me, when you're working with artists of the stature of like Adele, she does not need help on a top line. There's me saying, yeah, this is great, how about this, how about that, really as a kind of co-writer, as a producer, but let's get it straight. Set Fire to the Rain, we were not going lyric for lyric on that, or melody for melody. And I know that there's a lot of great co-writers out there that do that, but I mean, with Adele, she was good. She was okay. She had it down. Would I consider doing an online masterclass? Yes, I would. Advice on panning. Okay, so for everyone that is not a mix engineer that's watching this, just so this doesn't get super boring, but the panning, like the left and right speakers, when you're listening to, so say you're listening to like surround sound, obviously that's extreme, but you've got things coming at you from left to right, to behind you, to above, maybe not above, I don't know, I'm not technical when it comes to like audiovisual stuff, but left and right panning. The question is, so the advice on panning, so every instrument in a mix, try and see if I could demonstrate it, Oh, but you have circular dials, which control basically the sound field. If you can imagine it as a not like a circle, like the pyramid stage at Glastonbury, where it's flat, and then you've got the arc going round, and then you have the center, which is primarily for the kick drum and the snare, and the vocal, and the bass, and then you've got this kind of real estate surrounding it, where you can pan things like wildly from one side to the other, or heavily. Nowadays, files tend to be as a stereo format and just very wide. But, well, not years ago, people still do it. I do it a lot. You can separate even stereo instruments and just place them. So the advice is, do you need to pan every instrument? Sorry, the question was. And what I would say is that I do think it's important, because I think if everything is in this sort of either in the centre or somewhere in a blurry sort of place around the outside, then you're not going to get this sense of width and this sense of fullness. And I think that the only thing I would say is that you have to be very careful, and if you're going to pan something to the left, whatever, let's say 70 to the left, make sure there's something that doesn't drag you off to the left, so that you've got something on the right which is just balancing your mix all the time. And then if you have something a little bit further in, you can have like a tambourine on one side, something that's similar. So maybe you have a tambourine at 30, and then you have a shaker on the other side at 30, and then that will just give you that sense of width, but also give you a bit more real estate in the center, which I think is another thing about panning, which I think is important, is to try and move stuff out from the center so that you get a really hard sounding kick and a really hard, if that's what you want. But what everyone would probably want would be space around the vocal. So yeah, that's getting pretty techie, but I hope that that makes sense. Have you, this is one that, apologies for this question because I keep not forgetting to answer, but well, I did forget to answer. Yeah, sorry. Have you ever trusted your inner voice when people wanted to do things differently? Absolutely. I think that the instinct is super important. Obviously, whilst being respectful to people around you, but I think ultimately your inner voice it is super important in songwriting sessions. And I think that when you're, well, in life basically, I mean, the inner voice that said, when I was doing these gigs, these terrible gigs in like Luton, not that Luton's a bad place, it was my music that was terrible, but I brought out like the worst in my audience with my sort of drunk Elvis Costello Radiohead songs that I was playing. But my inner voice just said, just get the fuck out of Dodge, because people are not appreciating this anymore. You need to do something else. So I literally decided there and then not to do it. And it was a very strong feeling. And then I got a gig with Tony Hadley and started playing like a lot better things. And when Craig David and I had been playing guitar, and he was obviously singing for years, the inner voice said, do production. Inner voice said, do your album, so I think that you've got to trust your instincts, and it can be scary, but I definitely think, and then in a songwriting session, in like a smaller way, like if your inner voice is saying saying go here for the middle eight, or try a different chorus, or I think the thing is now is something that I always try and live by is a phrase by a quote by what's the guy's name? He invented lateral thinking, but it's called creativity is possibility. I can't remember his name. I could Google it, but it will come to me. It's called, he said, creativity is possibility, And I love that, because it just means it's like the best idea wins. When I was in the studio with Stormzy, we kept talking about that, and it was like, it doesn't matter who has the idea, but trust your instincts and just go there. And I think that if you can, trust those instincts, and if you can move really quickly in the studio, that's where learning your gear and learning how to record really quickly means that quick ideas are fun, and that's where your instinct can take over. Because sometimes your instinct is saying, I'm not sure we should have piano on Set Fire to the Rain, I think it should be guitar doing it. And that's all well and good. I'm sure like Adele would be there to say, well, just try it, let's hear it. But then if every time I had an idea it took me sort of 40 minutes to set the guitar up, and then the guitar was sort of buzzing, and then I had some problem with it, and the strings are out of tune, then it kind of kills the vibe. So yeah, always trust your instincts. How do you keep your chord progressions fresh? I think chords are a really deep one, but I think by listening to lots of other music and just every day just playing and just coming up with different inversions of similar chords, so just having a chord and starting on a different note and just seeing how that works, but by listening to different styles. And I think the overall thing is just being playful, so just not really being okay with not really knowing where you're going with stuff. I think that's really important, to just have fun and just give yourself that sort of permission to make mistakes, but in that there'll be something that you like, and if you can record it and listen back to it and go, actually I quite like where that went. And again, it comes back to the last question, where you're trusting your instinct with a lot of this stuff. So yeah, I think that's the way to keep things fresh. When approaching a demo, what is the balance between having a plan and knowing what it needs? When I'm reading these questions out, by the way, it's my handwriting. It's not like your questions that don't make sense. It's just that I can hardly read my writing. It's so scrawly. When approaching a demo, what is the balance between having a plan and knowing what it needs to be, as opposed to just diving in? The more time that I spend on music, I think the more I look at it like a very fun sort of game of chess. I think you can plan your moves before. I think that spending time like launching in and just, we have our toys around us, whatever those things like are. It's a guitar or the Fruity Loops on a laptop, and you've got, your sounds, and it's cool to like tinker around. But I often find that it's kind of a little bit self-centered when other people are in the room. You kind of want to see what they want to do and have an idea and talk it through. So I would say that always try and step back from like, and this applies to whether it's a mix or whether it's a production or whether it's a song lyric, to be able to step back and just know what your next move is going to be will save you a lot of time in the long run. And especially when you're collaborating with someone, is to be able to talk it out and actually say, look, here's what I think we should do, or let me know if you've got any kind of objections, but how about we do this and we do that, and then this could turn into this. Are you down with this? And if they're not, say, well, okay, how about we try this and we try that? And I think that we can sometimes, as musicians, we can get it twisted where the sort of journey, which is fun, of just going on this sort of magical journey, it can sometimes get a bit long in the studio with other people. But I think that's definitely something that I do all the time, by the way, is go on these magical journeys. But I definitely do it at times when no one else is around, and I'm just looking, to try out some new sounds, or I'm just flicking through stuff. And, it's not to say you can't do that in the studio, but I think with an aim and with a plan is the best thing. So, I would recommend just having a game plan on it. I'm just going to check out the text. I'm sure there are lots of things coming in. Thank you for these, by the way, Josh. For your live kit tracks, do you put samples over the live stuff too? Yes, I do. So that's, I'm assuming, live kit, live drums. I do. I mean, I think if I was the best engineer in the world, then no, actually, I think it's a stylistic thing. I mean, I love hip hop drums. I love big sounding drums. I love big sounding toms, and it's not that live drums you can't get that. But for me, I love the blend in music between synths and real stuff. So organic, like, gives you the feel. But then sometimes I like that sort of feeling where you're wondering whether it's, is that a guitar, or is that, what is that sound? I like that kind of mystery. So yeah. Having said that, Ash Sohn, who I work with, who is an amazing drummer and records all his drums, gets the most amazing sounds. Like, he's recording drums, doing sessions for all the top guys every day, and he just gets it great. So I mean, it's not like you need to like reinforce the sounds, but I like the idea that a great player like Ash could be playing, and then you could add like a little bit of vinyl sound on his snare to make it sound like a vintage snare, or like a sub kick underneath his kick to make it sound, like a old drum machine or something. So yeah, I do. What's your favourite software for producing? Ableton Live. I love that. It's over there running, and I love the speed that I can work with that program in, and I'm all about speed. And I love the fact that you can keep it moving, and it just doesn't stop. I love it, and I'm not saying that that's the best thing, because I love Fruity Loops, and I love Logic, and I love. I used to love Cubase. I just haven't seen Cubase for a long time. I know lots of people love Studio One. I do stuff on Pro Tools when I mix, but Ableton for me is great. But also, I wouldn't get too hung up on software, because it's whatever works for you. But I love Ableton. What's your best advice to upcoming songwriters or producers? I think this advice really goes for artists as well. But I think this is the thing that I see with myself and with everybody. I think the advice is to be real with yourself. I think that developing that critical, but I say critical with love, where it's not like you're slamming yourself all the time, but your objective, I guess, is the most important thing, because I think it's about knowing where you want to go and knowing really where you stand with everything. Is the work that you're doing great? Because the thing is with art is that it's obviously so subjective, that an amazing body of work could just be out there, not like in the top 100 at Spotify. There could be different kind of albums that like are super commercial but are not particularly artistic. So it's all subjective, and who's to say one is right or one is wrong? Like, certainly not me. I have my opinions, but I'm not saying that they're right. But I think that knowing where you stand in terms of developing that ability to hear your music next to something else that you would view to be something really worthy of praise, whatever that is. It's not necessarily always commercial. It's whatever you want it to be, like an old undiscovered folk song, if that's what like you were judging your music against. But I would say that just that ability to hear your work against other great pieces of work and just know what you need to improve on, because that's how you're gonna improve. I think otherwise, like, I do see a few people when you haven't developed that, and I was definitely the same, where you do something and you think it was the most amazing thing, and then you look back and think, actually no, I got it wrong. And so developing that critical, objective ear is I think the most important thing, where you can just hear something quickly and know what needs to be done, or really to know, okay, I need to go back to the drawing board and come up with some new sounds, or come with better lyrics, or it helps you knowing when a song is done. It helps you it gives you confidence. So developing that. And how would you do that? I think you would listen to your stuff against other things. It's like I always think about songs. It's like putting them in the ring, so to speak. Just putting them in for a few rounds with a real heavyweight. With Anthony Joshua. Like, how would your song? It's a weird metaphor, but like, how would your song fare in the ring? Would it? If someone was really, I look at it like sometimes if I'm coming up with a song or a mix or a song, a production, or like anything creative, I think like if someone was really hated this kind of music, would they just have to say, like, this is just really good? If you were playing like a grime song to someone that's just into death metal, and they just like that, like, honestly, would this sort of sway them? So I think, like, thinking about your creations as, like, whatever you want to think of, footballers or boxers, or like, how would they really like play them next to great piece of work? Like, get into your software and just get like Magic AB, or you can put reference tracks into Ozone or whatever you use, and just really listen and just go, is the lyric as good as an Adele lyric? Is the low end as good as on that Kendrick To Pimp a Butterfly? Or is the, and just to really evaluate and be really honest. Because I think that the other thing is that in your own like ivory tower, you can turn up a mix loud enough where in isolation, i.e. without other influences, it's going to sound good. Because it's just the nature of volume, that the louder you turn it up, the more kind of exciting it gets. And if you're not referencing it about next to other things, then and I tell you this from bitter experience of just being like spending 2 days, 3 days on a mix, not referencing it against stuff, taking it to Sarah, my wife, and we'd both be listening to it, and she'd go, yeah, I'm not too sure, and then we put it next to something else, and it would be like so kind of lacking in low end, and you'd feel demoralized at that point. But that is ultimately like the level of greatness. It's not about loudness. It's not about any one thing. It's just like, literally, if you're a songwriter, get some James Taylor or Kate Bush lyrics and like type them out, or Leonard Cohen, any of the great lyricists, and type your lyrics out and just put them side by side and read them backwards and forwards, and just see how those Bob Dylan lines flow, and how like unsongwritery his lyrics are, but how beautiful, and how the metaphors just like shine off of the page. And then read your lyrics, and if you get that same feeling, then great. Like, so amazing. Like, you've got a great song. I think you will also really know, if you're being honest with yourself, if something's working or if something's not. And I think so really developing that muscle, which I think it is a muscle, and you just have to be prepared to be demoralized for a few times. I was demoralized more than you can tell. If that helps, hopefully it will. But and I still am. Sometimes, there's a come to the end of a process and I'm thinking, this is great. But I mean, having said that, I know now to sort of just be knowing that I'm on course. But yeah, the referencing to great songs and great art, I think is really important. And if you're an artist and you have a great album, then maybe even reference other great works of art. Like, are you up there with Picasso? By the way, there's a few questions here that are kind of personal. Not personal, like I couldn't answer them, but like things that I want to do. I'm just skipping through because I want to make sure we have time for all the questions. So I'm skipping through the ones that I feel would be more like not generic, but general for most people. What's your advice for directing a band / session players for the first time? I think with session players and bands, I think it's a different thing. I think with bands, you have to try and understand the dynamic and try and fit in as a producer as like the fifth or sixth or seventh or how many people are in the band, but like the extra member, I guess, without kind of losing control of the session, but to feel like you understand what their thing is and understand what they're, a little bit like when working with any artist, is to understand what they're trying to achieve, what they feel that the weak points are, what they feel they can improve. I think with session players, I think the key is, going back to the other question that I answered, is to have a bit of a plan and to have an idea, because I think that session players aren't all necessarily creative geniuses. Like, a lot of session players, especially classical players, are incredible at reading the dots and reading the sheet music, but to rely on them to necessarily vibe in the way that like a modern a musician, like a jazz musician would be tricky. So I think to have like some parts, this is my experience anyway, to know what it is that you want to achieve, and you can always leave room at the end for like a take of, why don't you just try something here if you're working with whoever, drummer or sax player or bass player, like, why don't you just do a track? What would you do? Like, why don't you just play a track? And maybe you're going to get some gold, or maybe it's not going to be quite what you wanted, but at least you've got an option, and it probably took you the time of that the song lasted. So like 4 minutes, let's say. So I think that's a good way of doing it. So I would say, like, always have a plan, and you can write it out and see how the different things are going to fit together. And if you've got multiple players coming in on the same day, then yeah, having an idea of the parts. Because why shouldn't you really? Because we've got the sounds at our disposal, so you can just mess around. And I think to start with an idea of the sound that you want, and the tone and the general kind of pattern that you'd want someone to play, I think is really helpful. Then, like I said, once you've got that, then you can expand. And I mean, going back to Ash, because we were just talking about drums, Ash and I have a great relationship in that I'll always, just because I'm very drum sort of influenced, so I'm always thinking of drums. I would always think of drum lines, and then he, being the great session player that he is, takes it to another place, and then will suggest, that thing that you were thinking, how about we do that? And that to me is like the best session player in the world, because he's understanding what I want, but he's taking it into an area that only he can really take it, because he's like the expert of drums. So, but if I was just to say, I'm not too sure what to do here, obviously we'd come up with great ideas, but I think, like, take the time, definitely. And also, let's be fair, when a session player comes in, like, the clock is kind of ticking. I mean, no one has real sort of session players to just at their disposal 24/7. Well, some people do, maybe do, but yeah, you want to be respectful of their time, and I think that they may be doing other jobs in the same day. I always try and kind of have a good idea, because I want to respect the fact that session players that come here and, they have to get back. It's just, everyone's got busy lives. So, yeah. What do you see the use for commercial recording studios now that production is so portable? Good question. I think that the legacy of big studios, not necessarily the legacy, but the institution of a big studio is really important because of the culture that it breeds in terms of bringing people through, and the legacy that those studios have in terms of the older studios, in terms of the people that have recorded there, is just really inspirational. And I think that it's a bit like lockdown. I mean, we've shown that we can survive as a human race in lockdown, but isn't it going to be great when we can mix again and we can see people and we can get by without seeing people, but it's not as fun. And I think that the culture of togetherness within those big studios, where you can get string players in and you have this culture of the sounds of of all the big studios, that reverb at Capitol Studios, that is the famous reverb from the down below the underneath the studio, that they perchance just happened to put a mic down one day and to see how it sounded, and then it became the sound of Frank Sinatra's vocal, and all those studios that are synonymous with great records. I think that in this day and age where things are portable, you could argue that it's not essential, but then my argument is that it is essential for culture. It's essential still for people to go to the cinema, even though we can all watch Netflix on our phones. It's the culture of going to be excited about a film and to appreciate that and to stay to the end and to look at the credits and know who did the film score and know who directed it and all these things. Any institution like that, be it an art gallery or the Royal Ballet or any institution, I think is super important for the future of art. And I think studios are no different to because the recording is absolutely an art form. So the ability for portability is brilliant, but I definitely think that actually turning up to a phenomenal studio it still needs to maintain. Are you excited about? Oh, hang on, Josh, just put a new one in. Would you leave demos or beats unfinished as an idea for pulling inspiration in the future? Yes. As an idea for pulling it, absolutely. Yeah, I think that having beats, having a stockpile of beats to draw from is great, but it's also good in the studio when you're working with someone else, like I've been saying, to come up with stuff on the spot, because I think that's really cool, because you can read people's body language, whereas if you're like not hid behind a screen, but if you're sort of in the screen, it could be a bit vibeless. But I think that on your personal thing, just make loads of music and just have it categorized, and then go through it and see what you like and what you didn't like, and it all feeds back into that self-evaluation and freedom if you know that things don't have to be finished. It's sort of freeing, as long as you don't get into that procrastination thing where you can never get things finished, because that's a tricky thing, where you kind of just have loads of ideas but nothing actually presented, which is maybe something we could talk about at another time. Do you like all the music you make? No, I don't. I try to, but sometimes for me, I'm try to be sort of free with it. So it's just going to be the fact that I'm freely creating, and yeah, along the way I'm thinking, how do I make this sound better? How do I make this sound more interesting? But yeah, sometimes you don't ever think that you should like everything that you do, and that, you know, I think you have to look at it in certain days are a different kind of days. For me, like, as long as you're turning up, as long as you're putting the work in and the hours in, then you're gonna get some great stuff, you know. And not every song is gonna be great. I mean, honestly, I've got a Google Drive, which one time I could show you I think it's 32 terabytes worth of, which is a lot. I don't know how many gigabytes that is, but it's 3,200 or, yeah. Like, it's an incredible amount of songs that are just never going to see the light of day. For the ones that you've seen, so it's probably, yeah, I don't know what the strike rate would be, but in the early days, like, so many songs that weren't used. So it does show you some of the songs on there that weren't used I liked, but yeah, super amount of songs that are never going to see the light of day. Any tips for organising tracks, both finished or unfinished? I'm a big one on organisation. I think that through organisation, like, we sometimes get it twisted as artists that, you know, it all has to be so sort of vibey all the time. I mean, it does from a person to person point of view, but, you know, in terms of sessions, like, organisation, for me, like, creativity will really blossom within, like, the confines of, like, a structure. And so, any tips? I always have the kick drum at the top. I always have my drums at the top. The drums are always color coded. The buses, I mean, this is just personal, but for me, but the buses are underneath. The percussion goes next, then the bass, then the instruments, then the lead vocal, then the backing vocals, and everything is color coded. I was just reading that again because I'm not sure that was fully answering the question, but maybe it helps some people. But, like, my Pro Tools sessions are super organised, and that's why I quite like going from Ableton to Pro Tools, because you can bounce stuff out and get, like, my Ableton sessions are less organised, but they're still in a template, and they're kind of organised. So, but I think that, you know, when you need to just find something quickly and you just know that where the drums are immediately because they're all red, and that you can go and find that snare, I think it's important. But any tips for organising tracks, both finished or unfinished? But maybe what you're saying is organising the tracks, like on your hard drive. I guess the thing is, you know, you can call, like, a million tracks Ableton beat 1, but it doesn't really mean anything. So I guess the tip would be to keep, like, some sort of recognisable name, like, even if it's like fast break beat, dubstep bass beat, or like, obviously that's not going to be the real name, but it's something that you can remember. So yeah, something that's just super descriptive would be my tip. Thank you so much for all your questions, and thanks for letting me show you around the studio and some of the great instruments that I'm privileged to own. And the questions are great as ever, and sorry again that I haven't come back to a lot of you on the music that you've sent, but I want to kind of reply, like, properly, rather than just sending, so please bear with me. But thank you for all your questions, and if the demand is there, like I said, this isn't like, I'm not on an ego trip here. He says, sat in his amazing studio. No, 100% this is for you. So like, if the questions are there, I'm here. So I'm here next Tuesday at 6 if there's stuff that needs to be answered. And have a great week, and keep creating and keep believing in yourself, because definitely going to happen. I mean, if you saw that sheet music grade 2 piano, and I tell you, I've been practicing every single day this year, it's still going nowhere. So don't give up. Keep keep creating, and lots of love, peace, and R.I.P. Major Tom, Captain Tom. Huge loss. That guy made a huge impact on culture. So yeah, stay safe.